Darn good number. If you looked at the employment to population ratio, 60.6, so it dropped a tenth, 60.7 the last couple of months, best in, what, 11 years? And if we look at the participation rate, it dropped 0.2 to 63. It dropped from a 6-year high level. If we look at the unemployment rate, I don't pay much attention to it because the other two, I think we can bring more people back in. Finally, wages were growing, but not nearly as much, up 0.1 and 3.2 year over year. Finally, one of your favorites, we did see a 10th increase in the work week. Nobody to sum all these threads together into a nice, tidy picture better than you. What do you see?
All right. Well, thanks, Rick. That was a great summary. I would say the general picture is this. We're still strong, but it does look like we're starting to plateau. And I would say that for a couple of reasons. One is you pointed to the employment population ratio. I always look at that. It is down. It's down a little bit. You and Steve had a good discussion this morning on how much of that was demographics and how much of that was real. The easiest way to get at that is to look at the people who are not adversely affected by the demographic trends, namely look at the 25 to 54-year-olds. And what's happened there is, as you mentioned, we have had some pretty good progress there. We brought in about 750,000 of those people over the past year, but over the past couple of months, it's flattened. So it does look like we're starting to reach, I don't want to call it a peak, but we're definitely slowing down in terms of where we're going to see the labor market going. That's fine. Now, you mentioned hours of work. Hours of work are really important. 1/10 of an hour, again, just to remind you, is the equivalent of about 400,000 jobs. So that's a big deal. It is back up to 34.5, and that's kind of where we are when we're at the peak of a business cycle. So that looks pretty steady. Everything looks good. The 180,000 average over the last 3 months is still above population growth. So again, everything is good. But I would say that we're getting close to the end of the recovery, and the question is simply whether we'll reach a plateau, how long a plateau it will be, and hopefully we won't go back down. But right now, there's no indication that we're moving in the negative direction.
All right, now let's dig into all the talk, of course, the last couple of hours regarding the central bank of the country, the Fed, their mission, the president on the QE scenario. Listen, I understand that the administration wants the economy to do the best it can. I get it. And I understand that he likes lower rates, and talking about it to me isn't the end of the world. But pulling an emergency tool out like that on a day where the S&P strung so many gains in a row, does that make any sense to you, Ed?
Well, I'm never a fan of the administration trying to affect the central bank.
But let's not even talk
way.
about the effects. Let's just talk about what could be on his mind that would warrant that type of throwback into a tool that, in my opinion, should never be used again, much less when everything looks as good as you just described.
Right. No, I certainly agree. And, when you think about QE and ask yourself, when was QE effective? Most people would say, well, QE1 was probably effective. QE2 was less effective. QE3 even less effective, if at all. And so when you think about unwinding, one of the things that people were worried about, you unwind those tools that were the least effective to start with. So they're going to have the least harm going back in the other direction. On the interest rate front,
Ed, let me stop you. Let me stop you a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
Look,
sure, please.
Aren't there lessons to be learned from Mario Draghi's hole being so deep? It's like being in an ice hole. There's no place to grab. You can't get a toehold to get out. Japan wants to not only continue to stimulate, they want to raise taxes now. These aren't good ideas, and there's many places to look that these central banks are in a quagmire. Would you disagree with that?
No, I actually don't disagree, and I think that one of the good things that I would say about Chairman Powell is, while there were some things that we might criticize at the start in terms of his rhetoric, I think he's a very thoughtful guy, and I actually think that the pattern that he's been following is probably pretty sensible, particularly with the revision after the first of the year. So I would not weigh in too heavily on trying to influence the Fed. I actually think that they're probably doing the right thing right now. And as you said, look, this is an election year.
We're going to have to leave it there, Ed.